And now on the line is Celine Clarke. Celine is the head of Advocacy and Public Affairs with Age Action Ireland. Celine, welcome to Near FM.
Thank you for having Age Action speaking with you.
Okay, Celine, today is my first interview with you and your organisation in general, although I wouldn't be surprised if you or some of your colleagues have been on other radio programmes with other people on Near FM over the years. As today is my first interview with you personally, Celine, can you start off by giving me a bit of a summary, please, about who Age Action are and the kind of work that you do before we talk about the Pension Promise campaign?
So I'd love to introduce people to Age Action. So we are an advocacy organisation working to inform and influence public policy to ensure that people who are in older age experience equality and realise their rights. We also provide some programs and services to support older people, which is aligned to our advocacy work. So in our advocacy work, we understand that the majority of older people, particularly people over the age of 70, are not online or don't have good digital skills to be online. And so Age Action has a program called Getting Started, which provides free digital literacy classes to people who want to get online or learn how to improve their digital skills. And that's run by a program of volunteers at a national level. And as I said, the classes are free, but they're also one-to-one learner-led. So whatever you want to learn in the way that you want to learn it, our volunteers will assist you. And the other program that we have is called Care and Repair, which does free DIY jobs in the homes of older people to help people to maintain their homes, because again, through our advocacy work, we understand that home maintenance can be difficult for people in older age, particularly small jobs. Maybe trying to pay a tradesman to come in to do small jobs can be difficult because they don't want to do it and it can turn out to be very expensive. So our team of volunteers working across the eastern region and in Cork and the western region provide DIY free in homes of older people. And then also for anyone maybe who has had a recent hospital stay, we'll also be able to support them too. You know, sometimes people just might need a bed moved downstairs or grab rails put up or trip hazards sorted out, you know, to make sure that the home is ready for coming home. So we can do that too. So we work across a broad spectrum to try and ensure that our society and the decisions that our government takes are good for all of us in older age. And then we provide those two services as well that we know are critically important to help people maintain their independence.
Yeah, and I saw on your website as well that you're advocating on behalf of people living in rural areas so they have good bus transport, because it's a huge issue. And I'd like to maybe come back with you again to talk about that issue alone, but that's a huge issue, isn't it?
Oh, transport is one of the critical issues to support us all to age in place. You know, if we don't have transport, whether it's access to a car or public transport, we're stuck at home, and it can mean, you know, social exclusion. It can also be expensive because you end up paying for taxis, but it's also can be critically important for people who have to get to hospital appointments or doctor's appointments as well. Yeah.
And I know I introduced you as being from Action Aid Ireland, but am I right in saying that you're actually an Irish organisation, so you're pretty much called Action or Age Action? The Ireland is not necessary. Is that the case, is it?
Yeah, we go by Age Action. Our registered name is Age Action Ireland, but we're a national organisation based in Ireland. But we also seek to inform international policy as well. We're part of a network, a global network of age organisations, that is seeking to have a new United Nations Convention on the Rights of Older Persons introduced by member states at the United Nations, and we'd hope that Ireland would be in a position to support that.
Okay, you do great work in Age Action, have to say, Celine. I know your organisation has a very good reputation. Okay, Celine, the main reason I got in touch with you today for this interview is because the budget is coming up in around 5 or 6 weeks, and there's a campaign that yourselves in Age Action are members of called the Pension Promise Campaign. Can you tell me more about this campaign, Celine? Because I believe that it is actually based on an actual promise that the current Irish government have made since coming into office, haven't they?
So, Age Action is a member of the Pension Promise campaign, which was initiated by the SIP2 retired members group, there's a number of other organisations, including Active Retirement Ireland, Senior Citizens Parliament, as well. And we are working to ensure that the government introduces legislation that will benchmark the state pension at 34% of average earnings. And what that would mean is that instead of going through this budgetary cycle that you just mentioned every year, wondering how much is the state pension going to go up or not, it would be legislated that the state pension would increase annually according to 34% of average earnings. So it would keep pace, basically, because currently the pension has fallen behind because of inflation. And so it's necessary that we introduce this 34% of average earnings, and that it's legislated for. That's critically important. If we were at 34% of average earnings, people will be getting €45 per week more on the full pension. So that's a significant amount of money, particularly in the cost of living. And why we say it's a pension promise is because the roadmap for pensions reform in 2018 proposed the benchmark, and the roadmap for social inclusion in 2020 proposed the benchmark as well. And the government pledges, the current programme for government pledges the rigorous implementation of that roadmap for social inclusion. And the Department of Social Protection, who would be the organisation who administers the state pension, have been asked to develop proposals for the government for that. So it's in a number of documents over a number of years. They're talking about it for, over 20 years. And now really is the time to take the politics out of the state pension and to ensure that it is brought up to a standard that meets average earnings. Now, even that we know won't give many people income adequacy, but it's a start towards it.
Okay. Okay, Celine, how do we stand in Ireland compared to other EU countries and the UK in terms of the state pension currently? Can you tell me?
Well, it's interesting. At the moment, Ireland is a bit of an outlier in the European region because we're one of the only countries that hasn't benchmarked the state pension. We're one of the only countries that makes the pension politicised every year. So we're a bit of an outlier there in the way that we set the state pension. But we're also perform poorly as well in the overall pension system. It's one of the worst in the EU. It replaces only 39% of employment income compared to the EU average of 58%. So if you imagine, some people in other European countries get 58% of their replacement earnings when they leave work and go on the state pension. In Ireland, you get 39%. And that's a huge difference, just in a year and what people are expected to live on. And in Ireland, we're also slightly different as well in that the majority of us depend on social welfare for the majority of our income in older age. Very few of us will have private or occupational pensions that we've paid into or earned. So the state pension really is the bedrock of the social protection system in Ireland. It's the bedrock of our income in older age in Ireland as well. And currently, it's just not enough. Like any of your listeners there that are depending on the full rate of the state pension or even a partial rate, because not everybody gets the full rate, and it's particularly women that don't get the full rate of the state pension. We know from people contacting us and in our surveys, and also the data that's collected by government as well through the CSO, that people are really struggling currently to meet their basic needs. We can see that the number of people who were at risk of poverty has gone up um, nearly 10% since 2020, which is a significant amount of people who are now at risk of poverty because the state pension hasn't kept pace with inflation.
I find it unbelievable that we're one of the worst countries in the EU for the state pension. And just coming back to something you said there, I thought the state pension was a universal entitlement in Ireland. But you're saying that a lot of women don't actually qualify for the full state pension. Can you tell me why that is, Celine?
Yeah, so we have to make contributions to our pension over our working life. And what some people will find is that they haven't made enough contributions over the course of their working life. And some people will have gaps for different reasons, but particularly women, because, well, there's things like the marriage bar, there's a legacy issue from the marriage bar that people who worked in the civil service had to give up their job when they got married. So that took them out of the workforce. And then other people were working out in the home, raising family and caring for other family members as well. And so they weren't making pension contributions at the time. So what we do find is a number of people, about a third of people in Ireland who are in receipt of a state pension don't get the full rate of the state pension. They get a partial pension, and that's because their contributions weren't sufficient to qualify for it. And it's really, really important that anyone kind of like in their 50s or whatever and thinking about retiring by 66 checks with this Department of Social Welfare what their contributions are. It's your PRSI contributions. See what their contributions are, and because you can make additional contributions, before you come to retirement to make sure that you qualify.
And I never knew this. And how much is the difference between the pensions? Can you tell me, Celine?
Well, it depends. Each person is assessed differently depending on their contribution. So there's a scale of pensions. The Citizens Information Centre is excellent if anyone pops into them, and they can have someone go through this with them, or either pop into your local social welfare office as well. People can do that and have a chat with someone and check out what your pension entitlement will be currently, depending on what your contributions are. But we definitely know that those people who are reliant on the state pension at the moment are really struggling, definitely.
Yeah, and there's another issue. I don't know if you have an opinion on it, but I know someone who retired recently, someone close to me, and he worked for over 40 years, and his job wasn't a very well paid job, but like he said, he only makes about €20 per week more from the state pension than someone who has never worked a day in their life. Do you know anything about that?
So, like the number of paid PRSI contributions determines what your state pension rate is, but the state pension is a payment that people who are age 66 and have made some contributions are entitled to. And it's really important that regardless of whether we were able to work or we weren't full time, because there's many reasons why people fall out of employment or are not able to work in employment, such as disability or otherwise, and for women as well, in particular, as I said, who were working in the home but weren't making contributions, that they are entitled to a state pension as well. It is critically important that everybody gets an adequate income in older age.
Yeah, I think it should be universal. Everyone gets a decent state pension, what you're calling for. And as you said, there's a gap of €45 in what the current state pension is and what the government have promised to increasing it to be. Celine, are you calling, just a couple more questions, are you calling for the shortfall to be corrected next month's budget or over the lifetime of the government in general?
So what Age Action is asking the government to do in this budget, so the budget that will be announced in October for 2024, we're asking for a €30 per week increase. And that is to restore the spending power of the state pension to 2020 levels. And that will be step one of reaching the 34% benchmark. Obviously, the amount of money will change each year, but for this year, €30 would restore the spending power that you had in 2020. Everybody's money has lost spending power. So unless you were able to make more of it, you haven't been able to keep pace with inflation. And we know people who depend on social welfare are on a fixed income. And if you're an older person in particular, you have no real way of making up any more money. And so it's really important that that social welfare payment is kept pace with inflation. And so €30 per week would restore the 2020 level, and it will be a step towards reaching that 34% as well.
Okay, just have two or three more questions, Celine. You organised a series of public meetings on this campaign over the last few months, didn't you?
Yes, so the pension promise went on the road, and all of the organisations under with the direction and the support of SIPTU, to be fair, started off in Dublin. We went to Galway, Cork, Monaghan and Waterford as well, and that's what we've done so far. I don't think we'll be doing any more public meetings before the budget, but we do intend to get back out on the road after the budget.
Okay, bearing in mind that there's going to be a surplus in next month's budget, which is predicted to continue for at least a couple of years, would I be right in saying, Celine, that there are strong grounds for optimism that the government will keep their pension promise next month and over the next year or two?
Yeah, the €30 per week that we've proposed is affordable. It's a political choice to not increase the state pension at the rate that we've asked for. Given, as you said, that we have a strong tax take and a surplus, now it's a political choice about how that money will be spent. And it is affordable to increase the state pension by €30 per week to everyone who's on, and that's at the full rate. Definitely. And anything else really would be a decision to cut the living costs or the living standards of older people.
Yeah, I think it's kind of disgraceful as well, what you're saying about a lot of people, particularly women, say they've worked in the home for a long time, they don't get the full pension, because even if you're on the full pension, and even if everyone on the full pension, even if everyone gets the full pension and it's increased to what you are calling for, like, it's still not going to eradicate poverty amongst elderly people, isn't it?
No, the state pension doesn't provide an income to meet the basic cost of living for many people, and a minimum essential standard of living is what it's called. And currently, the state pension doesn't meet that for particularly older people who live alone. We often hear older people saying, unfortunately, if they've been bereaved and, lost a spouse and now they're living at home and they still have to make the same cost, like they can't turn on half a light bulb or half a radiator. Like they still have to heat the home and light their home. They still have to pay their water charges and their bin charges, and they still have to feed themselves. And so we often hear that it's a bit of a cliff edge of people will experience a significant decrease in their standard of living when they become widowed or a widower in older age and living alone. And the state pension currently doesn't support those people to maintain a minimum essential standard of living.